Today on Know the Truth, Pastor Philip de Courcy shares a lesson on Revelation chapter 21.
There's no loose ends. He's the author of human history, and he writes a grand and fitting conclusion. The story of creation, the fall, redemption, and restoration now comes full circle, and you have a happy ever after ending.
Ever wonder what heaven is really like? Well, today on Know the Truth, Pastor Philip de Courcy takes us on an eye-opening journey to our future home. We're discovering the truth about heaven as a real place where we'll live, work, and explore with perfect bodies in a perfect world. It's a hope-filled message titled, All Things Made New, and you can find this lesson and others from our current series, Things to Come, when you visit us online at ktt.org. Now, let's begin the message. Here is Pastor Philip de Courcy.
Let's take our Bibles and turn to Revelation 21, verses 1 to 8. I want to begin a two-part sermon on heaven. There's two worlds here in Revelation 21, verses 1 to 8. There's the old world and there's the new world. There's the world of the present and there's the world of the future. There's the world that's passing away and the world that's coming that's permanent. You see, our present world is passing. It's scarred and marred by the consequences of human sin. But because of Christ and his work of redemption, we have the hope of a divine deliverance in a day to come. So let's jump right in. There's four things I want to say. Only going to cover one of those this morning. But if you want an outline, we've got the renewal. Let's jump in, the renewal. The renewal. Our text begins with a vision of a new and an improved world. Verse 1, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth, that's the heaven and the earth we are seeing and living on today, that will pass away. I mean, that's a staggering statement. Everything you see, everything you smell, everything you taste, everything you touched, wiped away, gone. And all the works in it burned up. Because God intends, verse 5, to make all things new. Here's the promise of a new act of creation. Here's a new beginning, distinct from the beginning. We have it not only in the New Testament here, in Revelation 21, but we have it in the Old Testament, Isaiah 65, verse 17, Isaiah 66, verse 22. This has been the promise of God, and this has been the hope of the saints of God throughout history. A new creation, a new world. Because you see, God's got new creatures that he's redeemed and made alive in Jesus Christ. And he wants to provide them a new creation, a new environment. This could take us a while. I'm not going to spend a long time on it, but I want to just throw out this idea that I believe that this new creation is the old creation made new. The new heaven and the new earth is nothing like the present heaven and the new earth. Something bigger and better is going to be built on it and out of it. But God's going to take possession of it, like the man took possession of the ground. We could move on to the residents. This new heaven and new earth will have a capital city, a holy city. But we'll hold that. Because as I thought about this idea of this new heaven and earth, I was captured by it on two different fronts. What it says about God and what it says about glory. In fact, let me reverse that. Let's think about some of the implications and applications of this prospect and promise of a new heaven and a new earth, wherein dwells righteousness, where we will dwell in resurrected bodies, reflecting the glory of God in all that we are and all that we do. So, number one, what does it say about glory? Well, it says this, that our eternal experience lived out will be lived out in a physical condition, because we will have new bodies, right? Philippians 3:20 to 21, 1 Corinthians 15. So you and I are going to live out our eternal experience in a physical condition on a planet that's been purified morally and physically. What's the point? It's this: our future is not up there. Our future is down here. You and I are not going to live in the heaven above, although we will for a short time, probably without a body. But we will live in a heaven below, in a body, for all of eternity. Do you know what we need to do? What you need to do? We need to reimagine our view of heaven, because we need to tear up that old vision of a spiritual eschatology that's non-material, where we leave the earth for heaven forever, and we need to replace it with a new creation model. That's the outcome of God's redemptive purpose, a new creation, where new creatures dwell in a new creation, glorifying God. Our understanding of God's majesty and the mystery of his providence and the inscrutable elements of his ways they're past finding out, because we only see in a mirror darkly, dimly. But someday, face to face, when God will untie all the knots of life and explain his ways, and we'll have an eternity to marvel at them and understand them, and it will take that. We only have a bit of an idea. That's a reference to the fact that there was no glass, or if it was very rare. Women, when they were, preparing themselves, they would often look into some burnished brass. They could see a reflection of themselves, but kind of darkly and dimly. Not the clarity of a piece of glass where there's a perfect reflection. But someday we'll have a better understanding. In fact, isn't it interesting? Several times in the book of Revelation, John is invited to enter into a discussion about what he has seen and what is coming. Chapter 4, verse 1, come up here and I will show you the judgment of the great, or I will show you the things that will take place hereafter. Chapter 17, verse 1, come and I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. Chapter 21, verse 9, come and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. I'm looking forward to that, aren't you? Maybe God has taken you through a very dark tunnel, the loss of a child, some tragedy, some horrendous experience where you've been hurt. And it has raised questions about God's wisdom and goodness and love in your life. Come and I will show you what I was up to. I want to show you the tapestry of what I was doing amidst all the tangled threads of what you saw and what you went through. Finally, 3, you and I will enjoy a developing civilization. Why would I say that? Because we've already, noted that God will be among men. The holy cities come down. God is tabernacling among men. We'll talk more about that. There's kings, there's nations, there's cities, and they will reign and serve. That talks to me about civilization, purpose, meaning, work, development, creativity. We will work and rest and play. We will live in community. We will learn. We will love, we will farm, we will educate, we will build, we will paint, we will play music, we will travel, we will seek adventure. I think that's all there. Read about it in Randy Alcorn's book. And the inference is here in Revelation 21 to 22. It's not an ethereal, non-physical, out-of-body experience up there, out there somewhere. It's here in a glorified body, reigning with him, the new Adam, to do what Adam failed to do. We will develop the world. We will build civilizations to the glory of God, and how great will it be? We get flashes of it here. We're walking amidst the ruins of a once glorious civilization. I like what the Reformed theologian, whose eschatology I don't share, but in this I do agree, Anthony Hokema, he wrote an article once called Heaven, Not Just an Eternal Day Off. He's dispelling this silly idea of jumping from cloud to cloud, earning your wings, becoming an angel and all that nonsense. Now, here's what he says. Will there be better Beethovens on the new earth? Shall we not see better Rembrandts and Raphaels? Shall we not read better poetry, better drama, better prose? Will scientists continue to advance in technology? Will geologists continue to dig out the treasures of the earth? And will architects continue to build imposing and attractive structures? Will there be enticing new adventures in travel? Those are all questions, and I think the implicit answer to all those questions is yes, and yes, and yes. C.S. Lewis, to go back to some of his writings on the world to come, he says, you know what, we've got it back to front. We've got it upside down. He says, you know what, we tend to think that we're in a land full of color. But after death, we enter the shadow lands, the gray world, the colorless experience. When he says it's really the other way round, this life is the shadow lands, and the life to come will be in full color. I like that. That's why Moody said, didn't he? When I die and you hear about me passing, don't believe it, because I will be more alive than I've ever been before. Full color. All right, in a few minutes that remain, the last thought, it not only says something about glory, this new heaven and new earth, it turns our concepts on their head and reminds us it's not up there but down here. But it says something about God, doesn't it? Something glorious about God. In fact, something that God reveals to us. This is only the second time in the book of Revelation where God speaks. And in verses 5 to 6, God speaks. And we want to hear what he says. Then he who sat on the throne, notice that, he's on a throne, he's sovereign. Behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, write, for these words are true and faithful. This is what the church has got to believe. This is what will bring them hope and will sustain their endurance. And he said to me, it's done. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. The making of the new heaven and new earth says something about glory and says something about God. And I tell you what it says about God. He's sovereign. He sits on a throne. He rules and he overrules. He's the Alpha and Omega, the first letter and last letter of the Greek alphabet. That's why he's the beginning and the end of all things. In fact, according to verse 6, he's the God that gets things done. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 14 tells us when God sets out to do something, you can't add anything to it. You can't take anything from it. He'll do it perfectly. It's the God who gets things done. We'll go back to our introduction. It's the culmination of what he started out to do from the beginning. He got it done. Christ came, and in his death and burial and resurrection, he paid for sin. He defeated death, and he crushed the evil one. And in his return, he has made good on all of that in a larger manner. God got it done in Jesus Christ. It is finished. And God got it done in terms of all the prophecies and promises of the book of Revelation. Jesus came, crushed his enemy, established his kingdom, restored Israel, showed himself true to his covenants. At the end, he destroyed Satan, cast him into the lake of fire along with the Antichrist and the false prophet. And then he raised the unbelieving dead and he judged them at the great white throne, and heaven and earth fled away in the presence of such majesty and holiness. And now he's making the heavens and the earth new, getting it done. Well, John Walvoord said this, the message from the throne refers to the work accomplished through the whole drama of human history prior to the eternal state. It is done does not mean that there will be no future works of God, but that a major work has been brought to completion and that the works now relating to the eternal state are beginning. God brings things to their completion, doesn't he? He closes the loop on redemptive history. There's no loose ends. He's the author of human history, and he writes a grand and fitting conclusion. The story of creation, the fall, redemption, and restoration now comes full circle, and you have a happy ever after ending. I touched on this, and now I'll make it real just for a few moments. I could go a lot longer on this, but what God started to do in Genesis 1 to 3, he finishes and accomplishes according to Revelation 1 21 to 22. Genesis and Revelation are the bookends of the Bible. Listen to these simple reflections. In Genesis, heaven and earth are created, but in Revelation, the new heaven and earth is recreated. Chapter 21, verse 1. The sun is created in Genesis, no need for a sun. In Revelation 21, verse 23. The night was established in Genesis, no night in the world to come. Chapter 22, verse 5. The seas were created, but according to Revelation 21, verse 1, no more sea. The curse was announced and judgment came upon man, introducing death, but the curse is now removed. Genesis 22, 3. Death entered history. Death then exits history. 21 verse 4. Man was driven from the presence of God and lost paradise. Man is restored to the presence of God, and a new paradise is his to have. 22 verse 14. Sorrow and pain begin. Sorrow, tears, and pain end. Chapter 21 verse 4. The devil appears and the devil disappears. Chapter 20 verse 10. God closes the loop. Why? Because God is sovereign. He's the beginning and the end. And that must have been a great comfort to the original readers and a great comfort to contemporary readers. That's where I want to close just for a few minutes. I want you to go home with this thought. This idea of a new heaven and a new earth speaks about glory, and it speaks about God. And the thing it says about God is that when the world seems out of control, God's got it under control. In baseball terms, there are no swings and misses in God's kingdom. God can play, and God can hit every curved ball the free will of man throws at him. God's always on top at the bottom of the seventh. And God's game plan is unbeatable, for God cannot be defeated. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He sits in heaven and does whatever pleases him. Psalm 115:3, his counsel will stand. Proverbs 19:21, history is not time and chance. History is his story. And his plan will be perfectly executed and completed. So as you re-enter a world of sickness and illness, car accidents, acts of crime, in a world marked by crying and dying and sighing, in a world where tyrants reign, in a world where the church is persecuted, remember that he's the Alpha and the Omega. The future's not uncertain. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera, no. It's not time and chance. It's a sovereign God bringing his kingdom that's in heaven to earth. Tomorrow's not up for grabs. There's no alternative end to human history. God's will be done on earth as it's done in heaven. The end of all things and the beginning of a new world is fixed and settled just like God's throne in heaven. Talk about alternative endings. Close with this. I was fascinated when reading a book by Danny Aiken on pastoral theology to learn that when it came to Apollo 11 landing on the moon or the D-Day invasion of France, there were alternative endings that were anticipated, like the crashing of Apollo 11 or the astronauts getting stuck on the moon or the Germans repelling the advance of the Allies. And so in 1969, President Nixon had written this alternative pronouncement. Now, we know it worked out good. Neil Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon, one small step for him, a giant leap for mankind. But if it hadn't have worked out, here's what Nixon would have said. He said this: fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace shall stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery. But they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, the search for truth and understanding. Others will follow and surely find their way home. Man's search will not be denied, but these men were the first, and they will remain in the foremost in our hearts. That was an alternative ending, thankfully, that we never had to experience. And the same with D-Day. Dwight Eisenhower had a confidence in the invasion, but also had some apprehensions which he shared privately. The weather, all the logistics, pulling off one of the greatest sea to land maneuvers of military. Here's what he said about the fact that, say that hadn't worked out, this is what he was going to say. Our landings on the coast of France have failed to gain a satisfactory foothold, and I have withdrawn the troops. My decision to attack at this time and place was based on the best information available. The troops, the air, and the navy did all that bravery and devotion to duty could do. If any blame or fault attached to this attempt exists, it is mine alone. Two alternative endings. Thankfully, in God's goodness, we never heard them. But there is no alternative ending. God hasn't written an alternative ending. There's nothing accidental or haphazard about life. Nothing accidental or haphazard about what's happening to you. And the outcome that God can work it together for good. No alternative endings. Here's the ending. The old will give way to the new. The passing will give way to the permanent. And a world scarred by sin will give way to a world delivered to a state of holiness and happiness and health that's everlasting. Amen?
Yes, amen. You're listening to Know the Truth with Philip de Courcy as he concludes the first half of a message in Revelation 21 titled All Things Made New. Philip will be back in just a moment, so stick around. And if you'd like to replay today's message or share it with a family member or a friend, visit ktt.org. You can also do the same on the KTT app and with our podcast. So if you haven't already, grab your smart device and search your favorite app or podcast store for Know the Truth with Philip de Courcy and hit the download or subscribe button. Well, if you look at today's headlines, they seem to reflect a world that's not only questioning but challenging the foundations of the Christian faith. And in his timely book, Alive, How the Resurrection of Christ Changes Everything, Dr. Gabe Fleurer addresses these fundamental questions through a careful examination of Scripture, helping readers understand the evidence for Christianity's most important claim. From exploring the resurrection's foreshadowing in the Old Testament to its fulfillment in the New Testament, this insightful book offers believers and skeptics alike a thoughtful investigation of this groundbreaking and transformative truth. And today you can receive this vital book with your gift of any amount to Know the Truth. Your support helps us reach more people worldwide through this biblical teaching through broadcasts, podcasts, and digital resources. As Pastor Philip emphasizes in our current series, Things to Come, God remains sovereign even in challenging times, and His Word provides the answers humanity desperately seeks. Join us in bringing hope and truth to searching hearts. Call 888-644-8811 or visit ktt.org. And if you'd prefer to send your gift in the form of a check, you can address an envelope to Know the Truth, Post Office Box 30250, Anaheim Hills, California, 92809. Once again, that's Post Office Box 30250, Anaheim Hills, California, 92809. Now, with more to share, here again is Pastor Philip.
Thanks, Wayne. I'd like to take a moment to invite our listeners to the Entrust Men's Leadership Conference on May the 13th. Our theme this year is Pastor to Pastor. Join me along with Pastors Johnny and Scott Artavanis as we explore the challenges of pastoral ministry and church leadership and how to handle them biblically, gracefully, and effectively. We'll be sharing insights from years of experience in ministry leadership. It's our desire to equip you and encourage you as you serve the Lord. You can join us either in person at Kindred Community Church in Anaheim Hills, California, or online via live stream.
Yes, you can visit entrustconference.org to register and learn more. Thank you, Philip. Well, I'm Wayne Shepherd. Join us tomorrow when Pastor Philip begins the second half of a message all about the breathtaking reality of heaven. Learn more about your eternal address and how it should transform your life today, Wednesday on Know the Truth. Today's program was produced and sponsored by Know the Truth Incorporated. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."